Today, Charts Today comes to you from Singapore. I found a nice shady spot under this tree here. I'm here seeing clients and we're going to take a look at the charts for the end of the week. So let's get down to it. Okay, so I'm back in my room. It's Friday afternoon here in Singapore. Market's coming to a close here in Asia. But looking at what's going on with the charts, the dollar index has really fallen from grace the last several weeks. We had a bit of a bounce, and that's showing on, this is the medium-term daily chart, short-term 60-minute chart. So we are just trying to hold the cloud, but that weaker dollar has really shown its way through. And if we look at some of the other currencies, look at the yen, really big falls there. Downside target that was given pretty much met at 143. We have touched below there, and we've got a new downside target that will be activated with a new low down to 135. So dollar weakness is quite a theme there. And if we look at sterling, we see here that we touched 127. We're really waiting for this upside target to be activated, taking us into the low 130s. But we are just steadily below the cloud there. A lot of political issues in the UK at the moment, which is just affecting sterling's ability to move against that stronger dollar. That weaker dollar. So looking at Bitcoin, that's been a really interesting story this week. Again, we've surged higher. If we look at the medium-term daily chart, we see here in February, March, we had a target given to 50,000. We've nudged 45,000 this week. New upside target given to 62,000. And again, that's projected to happen around October next year. What's interesting, of course, is this 50,000 target was projected just using a standard two time units to 0.5%. So that's 1% every 4 days, if you like, or 0.5% every 2 days on this chart. So we can see that we didn't quite reach that target. So this implies that this target might take longer to be met. So just quite key, noticing the track to the time. Market's been very interesting this week. The Nasdaq having recovered somewhat, and we see here on the 60-minute chart a new upside target has been activated. We've got a downside target also quite key. So interestingly, we've now got a bit of a tussle going on. We are below the cloud, so it is still looking a bit toppy, the Nasdaq, but this could be a consolidation pattern, or will we come back to fill that gap? So that's going to be really quite interesting. Looking at the futures, we are down this morning, and the S&P future is down 0.2%, the Nasdaq future down 0.25%, and real seesaw going on here in the markets, and just a shortage of targets on those charts. The FTSE struggling again this week, just really not managing to move higher. Again, UK political woes. But what's been really interesting this week is a new all-time high on the DAX in Germany. That target was given back in mid-November. At that point, we were sitting here at about 15,800, targets to 17,160. We've got nearly to 16,750, following that trajectory quite well. And if we look at the longer term chart, this is the weekly, so it's a long term chart. We see here these targets in train. Again, this target not met. It started out well, but we fell away from the target. Same here, we fell away from the targets. It just implies these targets will take longer to be met. So quite interesting there. Looking at some of the other markets, Japan down 1.5%. So just weakness there, that stronger yen having a bit of an impact. Notice how the short-term target was given and met, but we're just short of downside targets because we haven't had selling thrust to generate those. But looking at the longer-term chart, still looking pretty good. Looking at China, this has been a pretty weak market. The downside target still in place. Again, the short-term downside target given and pretty much met. So that's quite key. The Sensex in India is still one of the better markets longer term and has had a pretty good run in recent weeks. We've got big targets there. If you go to the long-term chart, you'll see these new upside targets, new all-time highs there, pushing ever higher, target of 93,000 on the Sensex. So that's really interesting. The Aussie market is up 0.3% overnight. Some train tracks here on the short-term chart. That's what we like to see. So looking a bit better there. My Aussie stocks I know is doing quite well this week. And looking at this upside target, having crossed the cloud on the price, just waiting for the lagging line to do so, but looking better in Oz. So that's quite key. We'll look at the energy mix in a minute. Gold has been another, of course, very, very interesting story. We moved to a new all-time high intraday, and in fact a new closing high as well. But what's really interesting, if you look at the short-term chart, is how we've just held this 2000 level. You'll remember, if we look at the long-term chart, the number of times we've fallen back through the 2000 mark and not been able to hold that 2000 level. This is the first time that we've convincingly managed to hold 2000. Upside target to 2593, another one to 3673. So that target is a very big target. Predicted to happen at the end of 2026, 3,600 on gold. But interestingly, now we're nudging to new highs and holding those highs. That's highly significant. Looking at some of the key stocks here, we look at first year 10-year yields. We see this fallback, just sitting on cloud support on the lagging line, a little upside target there, but we are clearly below the cloud and heading for these downward targets. So we've seen yields really falling back in recent weeks. Apple, this one's really interesting. The downside targets have come off the chart. They've been negated. I can actually show the negated targets by just putting them on. There they were. These were the downside targets, but they've been negated because we've moved back above the level at which those targets were given, and we've got these short-term upside targets. Apple through $200 will be very significant for the market. Looking at Microsoft, that was making new all-time highs, has actually just pulled back now. So we are back below the cloud. Do still have an upside target here, but if we make new lows below 365, then we activate a new downside target to 345. So that's also quite key. If we look at Nvidia, this one really quite interesting. Here the target's a bit slow. So 2-to-1 is a slow slope on Nvidia. They've actually, on the short-term chart, we've moved faster than that. So we can see here the targets were met, but they were met much, much more quickly, and the downside was met more quickly. So you want to adjust these 2-to-1 factors on the slope. But the key thing is the targets have been met. We are back below the cloud on Nvidia. We need to hold 450. That's going to be really quite key. And if we look at Tesla, picture's very mixed here. We've got upside and downside targets. The medium-term daily chart, downside target here that has disappeared on many other charts, not so on Tesla. Now let's take a look at the energy mix. Brent Crude, now that's been an interesting one. We see here the upside targets were met and exceeded. Then the downside targets were met to $75 on the short-term chart. Again, the downside targets were clearly met. We're just short of any new targets at the moment. We need to hold that 74 level on Brent Crude, but watch for new upside targets, and remembering that trend is bearish medium term, so any upside targets on the short term are likely to be counter trend and short-lived. Similar picture, of course, for WTI, targets met more quickly. This is again the 2-to-1 factor, but we are bearish below the cloud on both those charts, so that's quite key. US Natgas, we have got a downside target now activated to 223. 245 was given quite a while ago, back at 270. That wasn't quite met, and not really clear on the daily chart. Looking at emissions, this has been a really clear downward picture. Of course, the contract ending shortly. 68 was met. That was given back at 82. And we've got a new target now to 58.80. So that's going to be quite key, this little mini upside target met. If you're trading emissions, you want to be looking at the 1-minute chart. Look at gas, TTF. Looking quite strong still on the medium-term chart, on the daily with these upside targets, but we see how on the short-term chart we really have met these targets, and again more quickly. 37.88 was given and then met very, very quickly indeed. So 2-to-1 is clearly not what you want to be using there. You want to be using a faster speed. And if we look at German power, this has been really clear-cut. below 100 was the target there. That's what's happened. We did actually go below 100 on German power. And if we look at the short-term chart, we see just it's been a one-way bet. And we are back below that 100 euro mark. We're back above it this morning, so not so bad. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. Until next Monday, bye for now.